The disappearance of Teresa Lynn Butler, a 35-year-old mother from Risco, Missouri, is one of those chilling cases that makes you question what can happen behind the closed doors of small-town America. It was January 25, 2006, when Teresa seemingly vanished without a trace from her own home, leaving behind her two young sons, but taking with her several personal items, including a video camera and her purse. Despite a flurry of leads, cryptic phone calls, and years of investigation, her case remains unsolved, leaving a wake of mystery and suspicion. Let's dive into this bizarre case and unpack what happened, and what might still be out there waiting to be discovered. A quiet night turned nightmare. On the evening of January 24, 2006, Teresa Butler's life unfolded like any ordinary day. She spent time with her sister-in-law and then returned home to her two young boys, ages 2 and 4, in their quiet neighborhood in Risco, Missouri. Her husband, Gary Dale Butler, was working the night shift at a local factory, as he often did. He tried calling home during his break around 10 p.m., but when no one answered, he thought little of it, assuming Teresa and the children were fast asleep. However, when he arrived home at 10 a.m. the next morning, a grim reality awaited him. Teresa was missing, and their two boys had been left alone for hours. The younger child's diaper was full, and his bottle was empty, a sign that they had been unattended for some time. This set off alarms, prompting Gary to call the police. Investigators were initially baffled, as the home showed no signs of forced entry or struggle, making Teresa's sudden disappearance all the more perplexing. The missing items, a robbery or distraction. As investigators combed through the Butler home, they quickly noticed that several items were missing. Along with Teresa's purse and cell phone, a number of electronic gadgets were gone, including a video camera, a PlayStation, and a Nintendo GameCube. On the surface, this looked like a typical burglary. However, closer inspection raised more questions than answers. Teresa's wedding rings, which she usually only took off before going to bed, were found under the couch, a detail that struck investigators as odd. Her black leather jacket, an item she often wore, remained untouched, and her Jeep was still parked in the driveway. Adding to the mystery, the light bulb on the porch had been unscrewed, and a key had been broken off in the lock. Could this have been an attempt to mislead investigators into thinking a break-in had occurred? Or was it a hasty attempt by someone close to Teresa to cover their tracks? The disappearance of these seemingly random items only deepened the confusion. Strange phone calls in the dead of night. The mystery surrounding Teresa's disappearance took a strange turn when investigators discovered that her cell phone had been used to make two puzzling calls in the early morning hours of January 25. The first call, made at 3:16 a.m., was to a man in Gideon, Missouri, a person who claimed to have no knowledge of Teresa or her family. Even more bizarre, a second call was placed to a residence in Clarkton, Missouri, where two elderly women lived together. Like the man in Gideon, these women had no connection to Teresa and were equally puzzled by the call. Both phone calls led to dead ends, and authorities could not determine their significance. Were these random calls, or were they meant to signal something more ominous? Speculation swirled that these calls might have been made by someone involved in her disappearance, attempting to create a diversion or confuse investigators. The meth connection, a dark turn. For years, Teresa Butler's case remained cold, with few leads and even fewer answers. That all changed in 2019 when Melvin Ray Hufford, a known felon with a history of drug offenses, confessed to his role in her death. Hufford's account was horrifying. He claimed that on the night of Teresa's disappearance, he, Teresa, and another man were using methamphetamine together. After injecting both himself and Teresa, she began complaining of chest pains. Within minutes, Teresa was unconscious and unresponsive. Panicked, Hufford and the other man, whose identity has not been confirmed by police, decided to stage a robbery to cover up what had happened. They stole several items from the home and took Teresa's body, wrapping it in a tarp before disposing of it. Hufford's confession gave investigators a clearer picture of what might have happened, but it also raised troubling questions about how such a tragedy could have unfolded. A grisly end, the final confession. Hufford's story didn't end with Teresa's death. According to his chilling confession, after wrapping her body in a tarp, he took it to an abandoned house that once belonged to his father. The body remained hidden there for years, even while Hufford served time in prison for unrelated offenses. At some point during his incarceration, Hufford wrote to his father, informing him of the body's location. After his release from prison, Hufford returned to the house, where he removed Teresa's remains and set them on fire. He crushed the bones and disposed of them in a ditch. Investigators were able to confirm some of the details in Hufford's confession, but without Teresa's remains, they faced significant challenges in building a case. Hufford's account left Teresa's family devastated, knowing they would never be able to recover her body or give her a proper burial. The trial and sentence. Is justice ever enough? In November 2019, after years of dead ends and frustrations, Melvin Ray Hufford was finally brought to justice. He was charged with first-degree involuntary manslaughter and tampering with evidence, a stark reminder of how drugs and poor decisions can lead to unimaginable consequences. Despite Hufford's confession, his sentence was seen by many as disappointingly light. He was sentenced to just 7 years for the manslaughter charge and an additional 3 years for evidence tampering, totaling 10 years in prison. Sheriff Terry Stevens voiced his dissatisfaction with the sentence, saying it didn't feel like enough for such a gruesome crime, but acknowledged that it was the best they could achieve given the circumstances. For Teresa's family, the outcome offered little comfort, as the person responsible for their daughter's death would spend only a decade behind bars. Still no body, still no closure. Despite Hufford's confession and sentencing, Teresa's case is far from closed in the eyes of her family. Without her remains, her loved ones have been denied the opportunity for a proper burial. Moreover, Hufford's inconsistent stories, such as implicating another man in the crime who was later ruled out by authorities, leave lingering doubts about whether the full truth has been revealed. Teresa's family continues to search for answers, even though the case has officially been solved in the eyes of the law. The husband's role. Was he involved? From the beginning, some suspicions fell on Teresa's husband, Gary Dale Butler. However, police ruled him out as a suspect early in the investigation, although rumors swirled about possible marital issues, with some reports suggesting that Teresa had received threatening phone calls from Gary's ex-wife. These leads were never substantiated. Gary cooperated fully with investigators and has consistently maintained his innocence. Despite being cleared, the shadow of suspicion has never entirely left him in the eyes of some followers of the case. And that wraps up the mysterious and heartbreaking case of Teresa Butler. Do you think there's more to the story, or is this case finally closed? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most puzzling disappearances, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories, mysterious disappearances, and shocking revelations from around the world.